wiretapped by the Obama administration,
which is absolutely consistent with allegations that Donald Trump and others have made.
You want to listen or you just want to shout? You don't know what you're talking about.
You almost semi-sympathize with Nancy Pelosi until you wake up in the real world and you realize they're the ones who created this problem.
Would you completely rule out questioning the legitimacy of this election?
No, I wouldn't rule it out.
We have just bumped up Maria within the last few moments. A Category 5.
Breaking overnight, Toys R Us filing for bankruptcy. Another victim of online shopping.
Let's talk about the Emmys, something I know most of you didn't watch. And according to the ratings, this is an all-time low.
It was so over the top, it was unnatural. People are not capable of that much hatred.
How many can they do?
Now that's just showing up. Yeah, let's sit on this for a while.
That's right.
Keep going. But by the way, that's how they get ready. Musicians of today get ready for a big concert. Back in the 60s, they would do something different to get ready for a concert. But now they're the rock and roll.
What would they do in the 60s?
I don't know. I've seen black and white video and some.
Now look at that. They're doing a little square dance in there.
Right.
Big and Rich are going to be doing a little singing and dancing at the conclusion of this hour. They're going to have to pause right now because they are completely winded.
Well, you know that song, it's 10 years this year for college football. If you watch college football like we do in our house, that's the song where they introduce all the teams every Saturday.
And that is a song
that how you say it?
that we are using to introduce Laura Ingraham, who, by the way, is the brand newest member of the Fox News Channel family. She's got a new show going to start October the 30th. The Ingraham Angle is going to be about what, Laura?
Well, is it a right angle, an acute angle, or let's hope it's not an obtuse angle.
Okay. Right. You could even wear a Halloween costume because it is on October 30th.
Oh, wouldn't that be terrifying? We're looking forward to it. We're gonna have a lot of fun. I intend to work really hard for the Fox viewers, and it's a great privilege. It really is. I've been blessed for 16 years to talk to my listeners every day on the radio, and I'm going to still be with them every morning. But in the evening, we're going to have a chance to talk about the issues that I think our country is really in turmoil about, and also a lot of the good stuff that's happening that we sometimes overlook in the culture and in politics. So new voices, a new experience. We're looking forward to it.
Well, I tell you what, if you were doing the show today, undoubtedly tonight at 10 o'clock, you would be talking about the United Nations General Assembly. The President of the United States is going to make his first address. You know, we've heard him in the past, Laura, where he's talked about how the UN is inefficient and it's bloated. What's he going to say as president now? Suddenly the outsider's the insider.
I think we recall what happened when he went to Europe for his first big trip to Europe, when he urged our allies to contribute more under their obligations financially to NATO and to their own military, to their own peacekeeping and defense. And he did that. People were kind of shocked. How could you come and how could you say that? But it was very well received, I believe, ultimately in the United States. It was pragmatic. You know, we're $20 trillion in debt. We're going to support our allies. We're going to defend them. But we asked them that they actually contribute their fair share. I think he's going to take that same attitude in this speech today at the United Nations. We're there. We're part of this world community of nations. But if America ceases to be strong, ceases to be a vibrant economic force, then we're not going to be much good to anybody. So a strong America is essential for a peaceful world. An America that's weakened year after year with economic malaise or flatlining wages is ultimately not going to be an America that's a force for good on the world stage. You'll see other countries like China fill that vacuum. So I think he's going to talk about that. And, you know, there is a lot of waste at the UN. I think he'll probably hit that note as well.
Hey, you know, what's interesting is the UN, the leader of the UN said, yeah, absolutely, I'm all for that. Bureaucracy is my main focus as well. And the president gave him some compliments. The other thing about NATO, you know who else enjoyed that demand to pay more? The supreme commander of NATO. He said, great, people are finally paying their fair share because the president pushed them. And when he came here and did a series of Sunday interviews and the stories were positive, it didn't get a lot of play. Meanwhile, the other thing not getting a lot of play is the president's budding relationships with a lot of leaders, including the French leader, who everyone said would rather be with President Obama. It turns out there's a real bond building there.
Yeah, I think that you're seeing in France itself, even though of course, the populist forces didn't win out last time around. There's still a great deal of concern in France for what's happening, both with difficulty and assimilation of some of the Muslim immigrants into France, and also, their economy. They're struggling. And I think Macron understands that a bad relationship with the United States, even if it seems like personally bad, it's not going to make France stronger. They want to have better relationships. I think we want to have better relationships with all countries where we can have realistically better relationships. So I think Trump behind closed doors has a lot of charm. He knows how to turn on the charm. He knows how to build relationships with people in positions of power. I think you're going to see more of that. And even the grousing that you heard quoted in some of the New York Times pieces the last time he traveled to Europe, the grousing from some of the German officials, they understand that, and again, in America and in a Germany that is not working to some degree in tandem on important issues, it's going to be bad for Germany. So they have to get Trump and their relationship with him on an even keel. And I think today will be a really good moment for both this country and also the United Nations, which has had its own share of challenges.
Laura, we showed all those pictures of Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer in the White House with the president last week. Well, she was talking to her base in San Francisco, and they all started moving closer and closer, as you can see, to the podium here, yelling at her, telling her, "You're a liar." They're so angry because she was trying to negotiate with the president on their behalf. Listen to this.
Do you want to hear an answer, or do you just want to shout? Do you want to listen, or do you just want to shout? Just stop it now. Just stop it now. Let's stop it now. Just stop it. Look. You are not helping the cause. Since you don't want to listen, we'll have to just go. You don't want to listen.
Who wins there?
Well, maybe Nancy Pelosi now realizes that a lot of these people don't respect borders. They don't respect the borders of our country. They don't respect borders in a public address.
Civility.
There's not a great deal of gratitude for even being able to stay in the country temporarily, let alone a sense of what can we do to make it easier for you to press our case. That image is terrible for those who seek amnesty for millions and millions of people who are living here and oftentimes working here illegally. It's terrible for their message. I think Nancy Pelosi realized that, and she was caught. She was caught there. She couldn't get out. It's kind of scary, frankly, to be surrounded by that many people and screaming, not letting her speak. That's what happens to conservatives, former Speaker Pelosi, on college campuses. Now you get a little taste of the medicine that the left deals conservatives a lot.
Well, the message they get for the governor is we're making this a sanctuary state. And that's why they feel so entitled to many of which perhaps who are dreamers or part of the 11 million, according to their signs, here illegally. When their governor says you can come and you can stay and you can use the system, why aren't you shouted down at a meeting like that? Yeah,
Brian, it's like biting the hand that feeds you, or you give someone an inch, they take a mile, an inch across the border, then it's a mile, then we want rights, then we want benefits, then we want in-state tuition, then we want free health care, then we want grandma to come in, then we want mom and dad. I mean, this is the problem with not enforcing the rule of law. If you don't enforce it across the board, you're going to create a generation of entitled people. We talk about the entitlement mentality for American kids who aren't forced to work or don't work, don't have jobs a lot on my radio show. Well, this is entitlement mentality for a whole new generation of people who are in this country. And Pelosi, maybe she understands a little bit better today, or maybe not. We'll see.
We will see. Meanwhile, I'm sure you have probably seen some snippets from Sunday night's telecast, the 69th Annual Emmy Awards, the lowest rated ever.
Shocker.
The Master of Ceremonies was Stephen Colbert from the Colbert Report over on CBS, and there they are applauding how fabulous they are. Laura, apparently not so many people watched because they didn't like all those Hollywood elites looking down their nose at Donald Trump and the 60 million people who voted for him.
I think a lot of the same elements in this story as we see with the NFL, with people tuning out the politics in the NFL. For some reason, these actors think that anyone cares about their political views. I mean, years ago, I wrote a book called Shut Up and Sing. And we're just not. No one cares. We don't care what people who have handlers, managers, PR people, who have spent their life for the most part not writing or creating. I'm not talking about the writers. I'm talking about the actors who are reading other people's lines. Now, there's a great talent in doing that, and I respect the acting profession. But you are immediately dividing the country and turning off at least half of your audience by spending the entire broadcast trashing Trump in some way, shape, or form. And it was, and Stephen Colbert has not been has not been very funny since he was channeling a former host on this network. So Stephen Colbert, dancing, singing, jokes. It got really rough in the beginning. Okay, so we all kind of got tired of that.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't get the ratings, but they should fire their PR people because the PR people are hurting their image with 50% of the country. They should say it doesn't matter what you think. Both Republicans and Democrats we need them both in your audience, buying tickets, so don't turn them off. It doesn't make good business sense.
You know, it's interesting to go back and watch the Emmy Awards, even snippets from even during Watergate in the 1970s. Politics, they had glancing references to politics, but it was so much classier, even in the middle of the tumult of Watergate. And there was some mystery and magic and grace still for the actors and actresses. But a lot of that's just gone.
That's because, Laura, I mean, we all go to the movies because we want to relax. You know, there's so much going on in our own lives and so much that causes anxiety in our lives. And so we want to go to the movies to escape all of that, and we want to watch really good acting. We all love the arts. We all support the arts. So when we watch these shows, we want to see, honestly, what I want to see are beautiful dresses. I want to see what they look like because I want to escape from all the stressful stuff that's going on in my life. And now no one wants to watch it because it's causing more stress.
It's too much like the news.
And I think, guys, that even when they pan the audience, there's some of the actors and directors, they seem very uncomfortable. So it's not a monolith in Hollywood. We're led to believe that, and I think people are intimidated. They don't want to speak out, otherwise they won't get parts. That happens. But even a lot of the people in that auditorium, they knew what was happening with that broadcast, and I think Donald Trump becomes more popular, not less. I'm
so glad he didn't tweet on it. Real quick before we let you go, Laura, your thoughts. People watching right now, they're going to say, "What's Laura's show going to be like at 10 o'clock?" How could you sum it up?
Unpredictable. A bit of a wild ride in politics and the culture. We're going to have a lot of fun and introduce new viewers, I think, to what Fox is all about. And we're going to do our best every night to make people learn and laugh.
We're thrilled you're here full time.
Thanks so much.
So now you get dental as well as medical.
Welcome to the family.
Great.
It premieres October 30th, 10 p.m. right here in the Fox News Channel. Laura,
thank you. Laura, congratulations.
Thank you.
Woman to woman, really happy for you. It's awesome.
Man to woman, I'm happy.
Well, she's going to be prime time. It's huge. It's great for a female.
Part of the family. Meanwhile, it's been 10 months since she lost the presidential election, but Hillary Clinton says she wouldn't change, and she won't rule out challenging the results. Dr. Bill Bennett is here to react to that. Straight ahead.
And have you heard Toys R Us just filed for bankruptcy? Stuart Varney's here, and Amazon is to blame. He'll explain.
Oh, this is some sad news. It's not all fun and games for Toys R Us, the toy store. They have filed bankruptcy, Chapter 11, and as online competition crushes it into $5 billion worth of debt.
Here to react is host of Varney and Company on the Fox Business Network, Stuart Varney. Stuart, is this because of Amazon?
Yes, this is the Amazon effect. There are other factors at play here. But look, what we're talking about on Fox Business is the retail ice age. And that is the changing of the way in which we buy stuff. And it is a revolution. You're seeing ghost malls appear. 8,000 stores will close this year. Maybe 10,000 will close next year.
Jobs gone.
This is the Amazon effect. Now, what's going on here is people are buying stuff online. They're not going to the store. But Toys R Us has an added problem. A few years ago, 2005, they went private. An outside company bought them out, took them private, and borrowed about $6 billion to buy them out. you got to pay that $6 billion back, and they're having trouble paying it back. So they've declared bankruptcy, Chapter 11. They've got a little bit of money to keep them going. 1,600 stores worldwide will stay in business, but they're in very bad shape.
Right. Stuart, I remember a couple of years ago when they were talking about the Amazon effect, they said, you know, retail stores, brick and mortar stores never have to worry per se because people will always want to go out and pick up whatever they're going to buy.
If they had time to do it.
Yes. But now, these days, we buy so much stuff sight unseen.
That's right.
Except a little image.
I never thought that people would buy clothing online. But they do.
They buy groceries.
Because you can send it back.
I'll tell you what you do.
Try it on at home, send it back the next day.
Women will buy hundreds of dollars worth of clothing, knowing they're only going to keep one thing, because they don't have time to go to the store. They pick out the dress they're going to wear to that event, and they send it all back.
Yeah. You know that.
Well, I know it very well, Brian. About 40% of all online selling is concentrated at Amazon. So, you know, if your industry is not attacked or taken over by, but if Amazon has an influence on your industry shrinks and Amazon grows. That's true of grocery stores, it's true of books, it's true of toys, it's true of all kinds of industries.
The other story brewing is Amazon's going to be building another headquarters, and every state is vying for the 50,000 employees that could be coming there. Is there a sense of what state wins? Most people look at the major cities as contenders. Could they go somewhere else?
Frankly, I don't know. They're going to be offered incentives to move to a city or a particular state, tax breaks of various kinds. Who offers the most is one question. They're going to have to go to near an area with at least 1 million people in the urban concentration. It's got to go to that. They've got to have an educated labor force close by and a good labor force close by, then they'll probably go to
Sounds like New York. Stuart Varney, thanks so much. We're going to watch you on Varney and Company, starring you from 9 till noon.
You got that right, son.
All right, coming up straight ahead, it's the new 10-part documentary sharing some of the untold stories from both sides of the Vietnam War.
Good morning. We're back with a Fox News alert. Hurricane Maria making landfall overnight as a Category 5 storm battering the Caribbean.
Next level stuff.
Heavy rains and winds up to 160 miles per hour devastating the tiny island of Dominica. The storm still a Category 5, now heading towards Puerto Rico, already battered by Irma. And 2 police officers are hurt and 3 people under arrest following violent riots at Georgia Tech overnight. The peaceful vigil ending with a cop car on fire and the school telling students to lock themselves indoors. The protesters angry after police shot and killed student Scott Schultz on Saturday. Some witnesses claim the rioters were not students. Brian?
All right, thanks, Jillian. PBS is launching a 10-part, 18-hour documentary series called The Vietnam War, sharing some of the untold stories of American and Vietnamese soldiers, North and South, as well as the history we may have forgotten. Listen.
There wasn't anything to look forward to. They were going to be rewarded for their service in Vietnam. And yet, their infinite patience, their loyalty to each other, their courage under fire was just phenomenal.
Unbelievable. Joining us now are the co-directors of the Vietnam War, Ken Burns and Lynn Novick. Congratulations, you guys. I'm through part 6. I can't put it down, and I pride myself on my knowledge of history, but I did not know nearly as much as I thought I did about this war.
I grew up in it.
What went into putting this together?
Well, you know, we realized we made a film together on World War II, and as we were finishing that back in 2006, we realized that the next big thing in the road of history, American history, the most important event since World War II is the Vietnam War, but it's something Americans haven't dealt with. It's unfinished business for us, and we thought, what if it was possible for us to go back and unpack all the stuff that's conventional wisdom or the stuff that's just flat out wrong and relearn what actually happened, but triangulate, show all the sides so that you can understand what's going on. So we have battles, as you know, that we've got a Viet Cong guerrilla shooting at a South Vietnamese soldier with a U.S. Marine advisor, and you're suddenly getting the intimacy of what actually took place there.
Lynn, there's no people in the Vietnam War a mistake. Really? Let's take a real look at this. If it's a mistake, Harry Truman, listed as a near great president by many, said used to be in there. Kennedy had advisors in there. LBJ obviously doubled and tripled down there. And Nixon stayed in there and ultimately got out during Ford. It's a lot of mistakes by a lot of great Americans. How do you explain it?
Well, this is what we made a film about, to try to figure that out, because what you really have to do is go back into their mindset. What were they thinking? What was the geopolitics? They were worried about the spread of communism. They were worried about our reputation in the world. They were trying to do something good with the South Vietnamese people. They were trying to fulfill our destiny as the righteous country that we think we are. But we really ran aground because we didn't understand what was actually going on there.
What I loved is, and I don't know how you did it, you took LBJ speaking out loud, almost talking about the reservations he had. Let's listen to a little of it, and it's throughout the entire series.
I just stayed awake last night thinking about this thing. The more I think of it, I don't know what in the hell. It looks like me, we're getting into another Korea. It just worries the hell out of me. I don't see what we can ever hope to get out of there with once we're committed. I don't think it's worth fighting for, and I don't think we can get out. And it's just the biggest damn mess. It is. It's an awful mess. And I just thought about ordering those kids in there, and what in the hell am I ordering him out there for? One thing that is Vietnam worth to me. What is it worth to this country?
He was tortured by it.
Tortured, and so what happens is that normally our history making is top down, you know, big ideas, 30,000 feet policy, and bottom up, what the experience of ordinary soldiers. But the existence of the presidential tapes with Kennedy, but particularly Johnson and Nixon, gives you an intimacy that suddenly these are no longer these infallible leaders. They're tortured people trying to figure out what's the right thing to do in Vietnam.
Lynn, you know something else you guys brought out? The courage of our soldiers, the men and women who oftentimes were drafted, sent into a war, and the courage they shown in the most brutal battlefield possible. They deserve so much more respect, and you bring it to them.
Well, thank you for saying that. That was one of the major forces for us of making this film, was to make sure that the soldiers get the credit they deserve and are honored for their service, which we really did not do as a country. We didn't really thank them, we didn't honor them, and they felt shunned, and that was wrong. And our film is at least a way to have them speak and tell their story. And you hear them describe just the terrible fear of battle and loss of their friends and courage under fire, and it's incredibly inspiring to us.
Final thought, Ken?
Well, I just think that a good deal of the divisions we experience today, the hyper-partisanship of today, had its seeds in Vietnam. And if we can unpack Vietnam and kind of repack it with new scholarship, and we went out for the underwriters for this and got it across the political spectrum, from the far right to the far left and the center. We got an enlightened corporate underwriter, Bank of America, who said, look, bring it on, bring on the controversy, let's get into it. The more perspectives we have, the better it is for us to understand and go forward, because America actually works really well when we work together and we don't make the enemy of the other.
And just finally, just keep in mind when you're watching this, the domino theory was done by the smartest people in our country. We believed if we lose Vietnam, we begin to lose the world, and we'd be boxed in. So you got to have that Cold War mindset in.
And let's remember that Vietnam is now a close ally and an important strategic partner, and as well as trading partner in Southeast Asia, and part of the buffer against all the stuff that's going on now.
Well, who's having problems with China as well.
Yes, exactly.
Listen, just scratching the surface. Obviously, please watch it. It's important, and congratulations on putting it together. I can't imagine what went into it. We'll talk more on radio, okay?
Great.
You don't have to dress up.
Well, I've got a face for radio. So
no, that's not true. You're a very handsome man, and Lynn will tell you that in the break.
Definitely.
All right, meanwhile, coming up in just a moment, it's been 10 months since the presidential election, but Hillary Clinton just can't seem to let it go. She may even challenge the results. And Dr. Bill Bennett is here to react, and he's not a medical doctor. And a bombshell report claims from Trump campaign chief Paul Manafort was wiretapped. So is President Trump right all along? Are we there yet?
This is a Fox News alert. We're going to take you to the east side of Manhattan, and as you can see, you are actually inside the United Nations headquarters. We are awaiting the arrival of President Trump. We understand, according to his people, that apparently he's going to motorcade over from the tower. It'll take about 10 minutes, and of course his big speech before the General Assembly will be at 10:30 this morning, just 2 hours from right now. In that room, you will see it live right here on the Fox News channel.
And what's at stake? Let's ask the former Secretary of Education under Ronald Reagan, former drug czar under George H.W. Bush, and Fox News contributor Dr. Bill Bennett. You got to check out his podcast at Bill Bennett.
Right, BillBennett.com.
Okay, and
that'll do it.
Always great to see you, Dr. Bennett.
Thank you. Good to see you in person.
What do you think's at stake?
Particularly this one.
What do you think? I don't blame you.
Yeah.
What do you think's at stake at this speech today?
Not much.
Why?
Well, we know what Donald Trump thinks. I mean, it was a little easy ball softball yesterday. Be a little tougher today, I think. He'll give a NATO kind of speech, which is you should do more. We do a lot, and you need to step up. He has not much use for this organization, but he's the president of the United States. They're here. He'll be a good host. He likes what Nikki Haley's doing. It can matter what the UN does if it gets behind us. But in the end, at the end of the day, in most of the recent events, it's irrelevant.
All right, let's talk about the election. Hillary Clinton, you know, her new book came out and she's blamed everyone for her loss. She's saying now, she was interviewed on NPR, and she said, listen to this about challenging the election if the Russia stuff turns out to be, if they prove something that he was connected to Russia. Listen to this.
Would you completely rule out questioning the legitimacy of this election if we learn that the Russian interference in the election is even deeper than we know now?
No, I would not. I would say...
You're not going to rule it out?
No, I wouldn't rule it out.
That's so funny because before the election, when Donald Trump was asked the same question, essentially, he said, I don't know, we're going to have to see. Now, of course, she's not ruling it out.
Well, I'm one of those in favor of keeping Hillary in front view mirror. Just keep it coming. Remember the kid's story, the never-ending story?
Right.
Never ending. Is this thing ever going to end, kids? Nope, there's no end to it. There's no end to this. As long as the vision in people's minds, the Democratic Party, is Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders, which, by the way, gives a slight boost, I think, to the new move for health care for Trump. The fact that Bernie Sanders has stepped forward and said, okay, single payer. Republicans were saying all along this was
Democrats
the plan.
have to run from that.
Right, and half Democrats are running, half are running to embrace it. But, you know, they need her out of the way. I don't think anybody wants her forward except
Do
her.
you notice a different tone to the administration since Chief of Staff Kelly took over?
A little bit.
Do you like it?
Yeah, I like Kelly. I mean, I admire Kelly. I have a son who's a Marine. It's kind of, you know, it's kind of in the business, in the blood. But nobody's going to stop Donald Trump from being Donald Trump. You may make him a little muted, a little muffled, but he's still going to be Donald.
Donald Trump was in Paris for Bastille Day, and he loved the military exercises, the big parade down the big street there. And, in fact, yesterday suggested that maybe we would have one in front of Pennsylvania Avenue on the 4th of July. What do you think about something like that?
Yeah, he says no to the White House Correspondents' Dinner and yes to a military parade on the 4th of July.
Priorities, Bill.
Yeah, well, these symbolic things are very important. Yeah. You know, just like we're spending time talking about the Emmys, you know, you can spend time on this.
But he didn't. You notice he didn't?
I know.
That
Good
was
for
fantastic.
Him. Good for him. No, I think military parade will be great. And I think the country could use it.
You think there'd be protesters there?
Yes, I think there'll be lots of protesters there. I will hope there will be a lot of protesters there. Sure there will be, because there's no limit to it. Look at this. Look at this mess they're making. Look at these people protesting Nancy Pelosi. Because once you say that Trump is all the things they've said he is, for Pelosi to sit down with him, because she becomes a collaborator. You know, how can you sit with a Nazi? How can you sit with a dictator? And that's what she's doing.
Because she doesn't really believe
Antifa.
Clearly, she doesn't believe that, and she can't believe the mess she left behind.
Yeah,
and the
that's
people that showed up have to be part of the illegal population that are waiting for amnesty.
Yeah.
You see those signs said 14 million. It didn't say 800,000. Those are beyond dreamers.
Oh, that's right. That's right. No, this thing goes much beyond the dreamer thing. And the dreamer thing is an opportunity for Trump, I think. He can be the good guy and be generous to the dreamers in exchange for a series of things that make sense. The wall, the E-Verify, and some of the other things.
Bill, there's a new survey that's come out from Brookings Institute that shows an alarming number. 19% of undergraduate college folks are okay with shutting down speakers they don't agree with via violence.
Yeah, well, this is an old theme of mine. Somebody who's paying $50,000 a year, maybe somewhere in America, is scratching their head saying, what am I paying for exactly at Middlebury or at Dartmouth or at Berkeley or at some of these places? This is the Antifa message. And by the way, the Antifa message has to be taken very seriously. There are a lot of Antifa people out there and a lot of fellow travelers. You got this professor at Dartmouth who wrote the book, Mowbray. And they do not believe that you have a right to speak. This is what they're being taught in universities, and since nobody else is teaching the other side in a persuasive way, college professors, that's the message they're getting. I'm struck when I go to college campuses on how little they know. I don't just mean about the arguments, but how little history, how little you can call up that they recall, allusions you cannot make. They don't know.
Which is unbelievable.
It is unbelievable.
What do you blame for that?
The educational system in general, elementary and secondary, and the college system. There is something called the College Learning Assessment. They've given it at a couple of universities. How much do you learn from freshman year to junior year? And they stopped giving it. You know why? They were going backwards. The kids were going backwards.
Bill Bennett, we always move the story forwards when you show up, so we appreciate it.
Yeah, I want you to know I live in person. I am actual person.
I know, I can't believe it.
Thank you.
Good to have you here,
See,
Bill.
Jillian, I told you he's a real person.
Now I'm going back to
Ryan,
North
you're
Carolina.
always
Right? Makes sense.
North Carolina,
Right.
that's right.
All right, time now for some news, and Jillian's got that. Jillian?
That's right. Good morning. Let's begin with this. New questions surrounding a deadly bus crash in New York City. Investigators now trying to figure out how a bus driver fired by the city's transit authority after a DUI ended up back behind the wheel of a private tour bus. That driver plowing the charter bus right into a city bus, killing himself and 2 others. The crash also injuring more than a dozen people, some pinned under the buses. The cause of the crash is still unknown. Abortion is free for everyone in the state of Oregon, including illegal immigrants. Governor Kate Brown holding a signing ceremony for the new law that requires insurance companies to cover the procedure without copays or deductibles. It also allocates $500,000 to cover immigrants that don't qualify under the state's health plan. A new report says former Trump campaign manager Paul Manafort was wiretapped by the Obama administration before and after the 2016 election. The CNN report now raising questions of whether President Trump's claims of wiretapping are true. Earlier, Judge Napolitano told us that concern is just the tip of the iceberg.
Were they listening to Paul Manafort during the campaign in order to find out what Donald Trump was going to do next in the campaign and help Hillary? Were they listening to Paul Manafort because they thought he had committed a crime? Were they listening to Paul Manafort because they were looking for something with which to tarnish the future president?
The New York Times also reporting the FBI is ready to indict Manafort, but was not specific on charges. Manafort is the central figure in the FBI investigation into Russian involvement in the 2016 election. A police officer shows up at a party, but instead of shutting it down, he turns it up. Yeah, partygoers at a bar in Wisconsin stunned by Officer Jonathan Lannis's incredible skills. He was a musician before joining the force and has been playing the violin since he was just 3 years old. Pretty good. It's awesome. So look at your headlines. Send it back to you guys.
America's Got Talent.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
And they wear uniforms.
Meanwhile, they've created chaos on the streets of St. Louis for 4 straight days. Now protesters are planning to storm a town hall. We're live on the ground there next.
Oh, my goodness. Then Big and Rich are going to perform live. At least they claim they will. And they brought their instruments.
Back with a Fox News alert. Look at that. Hurricane Maria devastating that tiny island of Dominica, making landfall as a Category 5 overnight.
Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands now bracing for the worst. Janice Dean is live in our studio tracking Maria's path. And Janice, the big question is, where is it going to turn and will it impact us?
Well, I mean, in the short term, we're going to see the potential for a Category 5 moving into the U.S. and British Virgin Islands. And then Puerto Rico could take a direct hit from this very powerful hurricane. We could see upwards of 6 to 11-foot storm surge, over a foot, 18 inches of rainfall. And then as it moves across Hispaniola, the southern part of the storm, east of the Bahamas, perhaps the Turks and Caicos could also see a direct impact. And then that cone of uncertainty gets wider. But for the foreseeable future, very concerned for the British and U.S. Virgin Islands. They could be completely slammed by this. San Juan, Puerto Rico, upwards of 18, even 20 inches of rainfall. And look at the forecast wind gusts. I mean, this could be already devastated by Irma, but this could be another just huge impact for all of these areas that were, hit by Irma, especially Puerto Rico. I am so concerned for Puerto Rico. And then we'll watch for potential impacts across the Bahamas and the East Coast. But for now, this is the concern.
They are in the bullseye. All right, J.D., thank you.
Yep. Thanks, Janice.
All right, meanwhile.
Today, protesters are expected to storm a town hall hosted by the mayor of St. Louis with a long list of demands.
The city's police department vowing to be there in full force after days of violent riots following an officer's acquittal on murder charges.
Griff Jenkins is live in St. Louis with new details for us. Griff?
Good morning. After 3 nights of violence, finally a quiet night last night that was accompanied by a terrible thunderstorm, which may have played a factor. But we're outside City Hall now. I want you just to look across the street. There's a small encampment. It's called Occupy Injustice, of protesters who are waiting for some of their fellow comrades to get out of jail. There were 123 arrests on Sunday night, a handful still in jail. And I went over and talked to them and said, are you going to go to Mayor Lyda Krewson's town hall tonight? And is there anything she could say that would appease you guys? And they said, no, we are well past that point. We caught up yesterday with one of the organizers of these protests, Reverend Daryl Gray. Here's what he says they want. Take a listen.
Our first demand is that police stop killing black people. We don't need words anymore. She can stop all of this today if she said that I am willing to look at the Ethical Society of Police recommendations that spell out very clearly how we can have better relationships with the police.
Now, the protesters are also upset about the police tactics. They say that this tough stance by the authorities, that they're going to stay in control, it's, quote, their streets, not going well with the protesters. So I suspect we're going to have a lot of fireworks, guys. Standing by in St. Louis. Griff, thank you. Meanwhile, Big and Rich are warming up in our studio. They're going to perform for us live next here in New York.
But first, we're going to check in with Bill Hemmer to find out what's coming up on his show. You might hear them singing. Oh, you're actually outside. You're at the UN.
Okay.
That's a different tune.
Well,